Hello, this is Mike Nichols, AM Social Media Manager, and this is Talking with the Experts. Today I've got Mark Miller joining me to talk about the latest report from the World Meteorological Organization. It's entitled The State of Global Climate in 2022. So for those of you who don't know Mark, he's our Chief Commercial Officer here at AEM, and his expertise lies at the intersection of technology and weather. He's been working in that intersection for 25 years. And before joining AEM, he held leadership roles at both IBM and the Weather Channel. And he holds degrees in both meteorology and engineering management. So, Mark, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, this report from the WMO, it seems to contain some pretty concerning findings. Would you mind highlighting some of those for us?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, they publish this report, every year in form, usually an update, and then major reports in there as well. But this report really highlighted a couple areas. One is concentrations of the three main greenhouse gases continue to increase. Actually, reached record observed highs in 2021. Those are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Glaciers, some of the reference glaciers they keep tabs on, continue to lose their mass, which means they're contracting or shrinking. Ocean heat content is reaching new record highs as well. So not only is the temperature of the Earth increasing, but the ocean temperature is as well. Sea ice is melting in response to that, and that is obviously a great concern. And last but not least, I live near the beach here. Ocean levels continue to rise, and as they do, they continue to cause more risk of coastal flooding and coastal erosion. So yeah, I mean, those are a few of the major updates. Generally speaking, it's been following a path of getting worse each update.
Oh, yeah, that definitely doesn't sound good. Could you maybe unpack some of that for us? So I think in the abstract, we can all realize that none of these are great things to be happening, but what can we expect as the practical impact of these kind of changes?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact is when you have rising global temperatures and warming oceans, there's just more energy to the atmosphere. And with that comes more frequent and extreme weather events, including extreme cold and heat, floods, droughts, wildfires, storms, intense cyclones, and severe weather. So these are all in response to that energy that's now available to create more extremes. What we're seeing is record heat waves that are claiming thousands of lives, in some cases in areas that never have had these type of heat waves. We're seeing unprecedented droughts in certain parts of the world, followed by record-breaking rains often, and it's warming temperatures and oceans are contributing to melting glaciers and ice sheets, which causes that rise in sea level. Glaciers are also a major source for fresh water, and with their contraction, they threaten water supplies for communities around the world, and in addition to water sources for agriculture. The combination of heat and drought amplifies wildfire risk and leads to longer and more extreme fire seasons and consequences. As a result of these unprecedented number of people are being displaced from their homes and losing property, whether due to flooding, wildfires, extreme or severe weather. And the report cites in Somalia and Pakistan alone last year, nearly 10 million people were displaced because of flood or drought. Flooding and droughts don't just uproot people, from their homes and cause property loss. They also create water and food insecurity. And, 2.3 billion people faced food insecurity in 2021. It's 9.8% of the global population was facing undernourishment. Farming accounts for almost 70% of the water withdrawals and up to 90% in some of the developing countries. So water scarcity really will exacerbate some of these issues we're already seeing. And it also drives the cost of food, which leads to more inequality in terms of what people can afford and share. So, of course, let's not forget the damaging impacts also affect our natural ecosystem, including loss of habitat for many plants and animals. Everybody's seen the coral reefs and what the damage of rising ocean temperature has done and just fundamentally destroyed the ecosystem, which is often a food source as well, because that's where fish tend to hang out. And of course, these are just a few highlights. It's all interconnected, and regretfully, this list is just the tip of the iceberg.
So yeah, none of this sounds very promising, Mark. I don't think any of us want to head too far down that path. So what's the WMO recommending in terms of how we should move forward in the face of all this?
Yeah, I think the first recommendation is obviously we need to slow down the warming, right? Mitigate the warming. And we need to do whatever we can to, slow that warming down, whether it be through transitioning to renewable energies, changing our patterns of consumption, changing our manufacturing processes, whatever it takes. We need to slow down, the warming. And so I think that's number one. But mitigation will not be enough. It's important to recognize that the greenhouse gases that are already in the air have set us on a trajectory that guarantees warming beyond the levels we already see, no matter what changes we make today. A recent report from World Bank found that under the best case scenario, 44 million people would be displaced by climate change by 2050. So this is going to have a profound impact. So what we're really talking about is slowing down that impact. But it also highlights the need for adaptation, because the reality is some of this impact is here to stay. So in addition to improving on those mitigation efforts, we need to adapt to the change of climate that we know will inevitably occur over the next decade. This is where WMO report offers an interesting perspective. Early warning systems enable people to anticipate when hazardous weather is on the way. They can inform how communities, companies, and individuals act to minimize those impacts. So the report's basically saying, look, the impacts are coming. We better get ready and be prepared when they do come to our communities and businesses. 1/3 of the world's people, mainly in the least developed countries and small island developing nations, are still not covered by early warning systems. To face this challenge, World Meteorological Organization and the Office of Disaster Risk Reduction will lead an effort to ensure every person on the earth is protected by early warning systems within 5 years.
Great. That's no, that sounds like it makes a lot of sense as an approach. What do you make of that perspective, Mark? What's your opinion on it?
Well, I think, frankly, the WMO has set a very ambitious goal. As they mentioned in the report, the countries are in various states of readiness today. Some have no capability, or some have antiquated infrastructure that hasn't been maintained. And some countries, even with the most mature systems, don't cover all the hazards. So I think it's a very ambitious goal. In the emerging world alone, it can take 3 to 5 years, from design to funding to program execution and delivery. So that 5-year window does not leave you a lot of room to get every person in the world covered by an early warning system. So I view it as a call to action, that will require all hands on deck, the best minds and companies from around the world to collaborate to bring the WMO's mandate to reality. But I do feel like with proven experience and solutions, anything is possible. And today, as an example, AEM provides early warning systems from the county level up to the country level in various places around the world, and for many of the hazards that we've talked about earlier. The key elements of those solutions, number one is reliable sensing. You need to monitor it. You need to understand what's going on with the weather and the impacts on the environment. Obviously, you need really high quality data. Those networks have to perform when you need them. And then you need to turn that data into insights that people can act on. And lastly, there's a lot of stakeholders in a hazard event. You need to enable those stakeholders to collaborate and make the best decisions, and then get that warning out to the community. So I think those are all the key elements that we see of a multi-hazard early warning system. Certainly predicting the hazard, to have be able to take proactive measures as opposed to reactive is really key. And so that's one area where I think you'll see a lot more development over the next few years, not just measuring and responding to the system in the hazard, but actually predicting it in advance to give people more time to take action.
So thanks, Mark. This has really been an eye-opening discussion. We've covered a whole lot of material. So if you wanted to really boil all this down and leave our audience with like any final thoughts, what would that be?
Yeah, I think there's no question that the world will be facing escalating environmental risk over the next couple years to decades. I think there's enough evidence that would demonstrate that. This report certainly demonstrated that. To survive, many communities and organizations will need to arm themselves with vastly improved environmental insights and end-to-end scalable frameworks for multi-hazard risk management. But with the right insights and tools to manage it, they will be able to take the type of decisive action to drive better outcomes. So instead of merely surviving the new normal, we may be able to thrive. And that's really our mission at AAM.
That's inspiring. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate being here. Thank you very much. And thanks for all of you for watching. Till next time, this is Mike Nichols for AEM and for Talking with the Experts.